How Japanese minimalism made me stronger than my impulses. Ever catch yourself buying something you don't really need just because it was on sale? Or scrolling through your phone when you meant to work on something important? What if there was a way to break free from these impulses without feeling like we're constantly fighting ourselves? That's exactly what Japanese minimalism taught us, and honestly, it changed everything. So here's the thing about modern life. We're all drowning in stuff, notifications, choices, and honestly, it's exhausting. We wake up and immediately check our phones. We buy things we forget about in a week. We say yes to plans we don't even want to attend. And the crazy part? We know we're doing it, but somehow we just can't stop. It's like we're all stuck on this endless treadmill of wanting more, doing more, being more. But then we discovered something that flipped our entire perspective upside down. Japanese minimalism isn't just about having less stuff or living in an empty room with one plant. It's actually a whole philosophy about understanding what truly matters and building the mental strength to let go of everything else. And when we started applying these principles to our daily lives, something incredible happened. We became stronger than our impulses, not by fighting them harder, but by understanding them differently. The problem with our impulses. Let's talk about what's really happening when we give in to our impulses. Research from Princeton University found that the average person makes about 35,000 decisions every single day. That's insane when you think about it. And here's where it gets interesting. Our brains aren't actually designed to handle this much decision making. So what happens? We default to the easiest choice, which is usually whatever feels good right now. That's why we end up ordering takeout instead of cooking the healthy meal we planned. That's why we buy that jacket we'll maybe wear twice. That's why we binge watch another episode when we promised ourselves we'd go to bed early. Our brains are literally overwhelmed, and impulses are just our mind's way of taking the path of least resistance. The problem isn't that we're weak or lazy. The problem is we're trying to navigate a modern world with ancient wiring. And companies know this. They've actually designed everything around triggering our impulses. Those flash sales that end in 2 hours, they're playing on our fear of missing out. Those autoplay features on streaming platforms, they're hijacking our decision fatigue. The endless scroll on social media, it's literally engineered to keep us reaching for our phones without thinking. We're not fighting fair here. Discovering Japanese minimalism. When we first heard about Japanese minimalism, we thought it was just another decluttering trend. Fold your shirts a certain way and suddenly your life is perfect. But the more we learned about it, the more we realized this runs way deeper. Japanese minimalism comes from concepts like which is about appreciating empty space, and kanso, which means simplicity. But our favorite concept, Danshari. Danshari breaks down into 3 parts. Dan means refusing things you don't need. Sha is about discarding things that are useless, and Ri means separating from the attachment to possessions. Notice how it's not just about throwing stuff away. It's about fundamentally changing our relationship with wanting things in the first place. That's where the real power comes from. What really clicked for us was understanding that Japanese minimalism isn't about deprivation. It's actually about freedom. Think about it. When we have fewer things demanding our attention, we have more energy for what actually matters. When we're not constantly chasing the next purchase or experience, we can actually enjoy what we already have. It's like someone turned down the volume on all the noise, and suddenly we could hear ourselves think again. How it builds strength against impulses. So here's where things get practical. Japanese minimalism doesn't just tell us to resist our impulses. It actually builds our mental muscles in really specific ways. The first thing we learned was the concept of one in, one out. Whenever we want to bring something new into our lives, something else has to go. Sounds simple, right? But this one rule completely changed how we think about buying stuff. Before we hit purchase on anything, we now have to ask ourselves what we're willing to give up for it. And most of the time, the thing we're about to buy suddenly doesn't seem that important. We're not relying on willpower anymore. We're using a system that makes impulsive buying actually difficult. That's the key difference. We're not trying to be stronger than our impulses. We're removing the easy path that impulses love to take. Another game changer was understanding Mottainai, which is this beautiful Japanese concept about regret over waste. It's not about guilt or shame, it's about genuine appreciation for the resources and effort that went into creating something. When we started viewing our purchases through this lens, something shifted. We stopped seeing things as disposable. We started asking if we genuinely use something enough to honor the resources it took to make it. This naturally killed so many impulse purchases without us feeling deprived. The 30-day practice. We tried this exercise that's common in Japanese minimalist circles, and honestly, it felt weird at first. For 30 days, whenever we wanted to buy something non-essential, we'd just wait. We'd write down what we wanted, how much it cost, and why we thought we needed it. Then we'd revisit it after 30 days. Want to know how many things we actually bought after waiting? Less than 10%. What shocked us wasn't just that we didn't want most of those things anymore. It was understanding why we wanted them in the first place. Most of our impulses weren't about the actual item. We wanted to buy something because we were bored, stressed, or trying to fill some emotional gap. That new gadget wasn't going to solve our real problem. The fancy coffee maker wasn't going to make our mornings less chaotic. We were using shopping as an emotional band-aid, and seeing that pattern written out over 30 days was honestly a wake-up call. This practice taught us something crucial. There's usually a gap between wanting something and needing something. Our impulses try to close that gap instantly. But when we give ourselves space, we can see the difference clearly. And here's what's beautiful about this approach. We're not saying no to ourselves harshly. We're just saying, not right now. That gentle delay is enough to break the impulse cycle without creating feelings of restriction.
Applying it beyond possessions. The really powerful part came when we realized these same principles work for everything, not just buying stuff. Think about our digital impulses. How many times do we unlock our phones without even meaning to? Studies show the average person checks their phone about 96 times per day. That's once every 10 minutes during waking hours. Those are all tiny impulses we're following without question. We started applying the minimalist principle of intentional space to our phone habits. Instead of fighting the urge to check our phones, we created friction. We turned off all non-essential notifications. We made our home screen boring by removing the colorful apps. We started asking ourselves, what am I looking for before unlocking our phones? These small changes didn't require superhuman willpower. They just made following the impulse slightly harder, and that was enough. The same thing worked with our schedules. We used to say yes to everything because saying no felt uncomfortable. But Japanese minimalism taught us about creating that valuable empty space. We started seeing our free time as something precious that shouldn't be cluttered. Now when someone asks us to do something, we pause and consider what we'd be giving up. Usually it's rest, creative time, or space to just exist without plans. And when we frame it that way, saying no becomes easier because we're saying yes to something more important. The mental shift. What really makes Japanese minimalism powerful against impulses is the mindset shift it creates. We stopped seeing ourselves as people who need to constantly fight against our desires. Instead, we became people who simply have different priorities. That might sound like a small distinction, but it changes everything. Fighting takes energy. Having clear priorities just takes clarity. There's this concept in Japanese culture called ikigai, which roughly translates to reason for being. When we got clear on our ikigai, understanding what truly mattered to us, random impulses lost their power. That impulse to buy a new laptop stopped being tempting when we realized our current one works fine and spending that money would delay a goal we actually care about. The impulse to scroll social media for hours became less appealing when we understood it was stealing time from relationships we value. We're not perfect at this. We still have impulses, and sometimes we still follow them. But the difference now is we're making conscious choices rather than running on autopilot. And when we do give in to an impulse, we notice it, understand why it happened, and learn from it. That's growth. That's becoming stronger than our impulses, not by suppressing them, but by building a life where they simply matter less. Japanese minimalism gave us something we didn't even know we needed. It gave us permission to want less, to do less, to be satisfied with enough. In a world that constantly tells us more is better, that's actually revolutionary. We're not fighting against our impulses with white-knuckle willpower anymore. We've built a life where those impulses just have less room to take root. And honestly, that feels like freedom. Real, genuine, peaceful freedom.